Well, week 7 turned out to be the week of upsets so far. Syracuse knocked out Clemson, the number 2 team. Thank you for tuning in to RedZone to EndZone. I'm Janae Muchmore.
And I'm Griffin Parkrose.
And we have some more exciting matchups for you this week as well. Well, the number 10 team in the nation, Oklahoma State, travels to Texas, and I think at this point it's fair to say they've had their fix of Texas teams.
Yeah, 4 Texas teams in a row is pretty tough, and after last week's blowout win over Baylor and Mike Gundy taking his shirt off for apparently no reason, Oklahoma State really looks to be continuing their streak of wins against Texas teams. And it should be fairly easy for them this week against a Texas team who wasn't quite able to pull out a win last week in the Red River rivalry. Oklahoma State, they still have the number 1 offense in the entire country, averaging just over 610 yards per game. They also have a Heisman hopeful in Mason Rudolph, who's averaging 395 passing yards a game and has 19 touchdowns on the season. He's one of the most impressive quarterbacks that we've seen all season, and his draft stock is definitely jumping so far this year. He leads one of the top aerial attacks in the entire nation, and it's really benefited by his extremely strong and athletic offensive line, who's only allowed 7 sacks all season. Rudolph is a fairly athletic quarterback with decent escapability, but that offensive line has really kept him clean, kept him safe, and kept opposing D-lines out of the backfield all season.
Well, and a lot of times people give quarterbacks a lot of credits for the success of the offense, but it can rely on the line heavily as well.
Yeah, you can look at a lot of the Wisconsin teams and the Alabama teams who, they'll have 3 or 4 NFL caliber offensive linemen on their teams. That helps a lot.
Texas has their own strengths as well. They may be coming off a loss to Oklahoma last week, but I wouldn't necessarily count it as a loss in my book. You didn't win, Texas, but you played your hearts out, and you found a way to play against the top-ranked offense going into last week. So a 5-point difference in a game against the top 10 team, that's not bad. You should be proud of yourselves. But they also have a pretty semi-balanced offense. Ehlinger isn't the most accurate passer, but the Longhorns normally have different options they can utilize between passing and running the ball.
As you said, Ehlinger has not been a very accurate passer this year. He's only completing about 54% of his passes, which is pretty low, especially for college football, where quarterbacks are generally around 60%. They also have the 108th ranked pass defense so far this year, which is just really bad. And against this extremely explosive Oklahoma State offense and Mason Rudolph, it's something that'll definitely need to be tightened up in order for them to even really compete in this game. They were able to last week against Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma. It'll be interesting to see if they can continue that success again into this week. But again, as you said earlier, last week wasn't all bad. They did have Michael Dixon, their punter, who was the Ray Guy punter of the week. Pretty impressive for a guy who no one had ever heard of before. They do also allow just over 380 yards per game, which is, as I said earlier, their defense is something that they really have to work on.
Oklahoma State also struggles a little bit defensively. Their offense, can't really say much about them in terms of weaknesses, but the passing defense could use a little work. Occasionally, these Cowboys get beat by the cattle downfield. Luckily, the 223 yards they give up per game can hold steady in a showdown, especially against the Longhorns. Fumbles, they've had 6 fumbles this season, putting them down towards the bottom of the pack in college football in that category. And they've been kind of quiet in this matchup. Oklahoma State may hold the current win streak for the past 2 years, but Texas dominates with 24 wins compared to 7 losses.
Yeah, Oklahoma State's definitely had a pretty tough road so far in this rivalry. This week, my key player for the game is Mason Rudolph. He's on track for almost 5,000 yards on the season, and his 6 remaining opponents are all 85th or lower nationally in pass defense. Look for him to continue his Heisman run late into the season. Look at him to continue to improve. Look at that offense to just continue to put up video game-like stats. His QBR on the season is also 191, which is one of the top in all of college football. He has 19 touchdowns and limits those turnovers like you said earlier, they do have some fumbles, but he's only thrown 4 interceptions on the season, which is a pretty impressive stat for someone who throws the ball as many times as he does.
We've seen a lot of quarterbacks, especially this year, struggle with interceptions, and he's, unfortunately for Oklahoma State, not one of them. My key player on the Texas side of the ball, we have Chris Warren III. He's a designated running back that doubles as a top 5 wide receiver. He leads the team with 274 rushing yards with 5 touchdowns and adds another 164 receiving yards and another touchdown, averaging 13.7 yards per reception. Griffin, who are you liking in this matchup?
So far in this matchup, Oklahoma State's played great in the state of Texas so far this year. I like Oklahoma State to continue their success and continue to really creep in and maybe even challenge TCU for one of the playoff spots towards the end of the season. I also look at Mason Rudolph, as I said earlier. I look at him to continue his Heisman campaign. I think this is going to be a huge game for that Oklahoma State offense. Their passing attack is going to look really good. I have them winning.
I do as well. You can't really beat Mason Rudolph. The Texas defense needs to do a lot of work if they want to be ready to take on this high-caliber offense.
And that's all for this week. Tune in next week and watch the rest of our episodes. I'm Griffin Parkrose.
And I'm Janae Muchmore. Don't forget to follow us on social media at redtoend.com or like us on Facebook. You'll see a couple of our episodes for this week along the right-hand side of your screen. Have a great night.